move on here, Tage, to the Philadelphia Eagles against the Pittsburgh Steelers. We're going to start with the Eagles offense against the Steelers defense. The Eagles offense, it's been on a little bit of a ride this week, through the media. You get comments from Brandon Graham. You get all the questions on every A block of every national show. Just what's going on with the Eagles passing game. I want to say the run game is pretty fantastic. There's tons of just variations of counter. It's sequenced well. They're running two open spaces, and I feel like they do a good job. Obviously, they're, from a player perspective, their offensive line is great. Jeff Stoutland as an offensive line coach is awesome. But they put, I think, their running backs in the best positions to succeed from a formation perspective, from a scheme perspective, and then from an execution perspective. And it feels like the passing game is just, so far in the opposite direction, where it's a low volume passing game. So you're going to have a big magnifying glass over kind of any small issue that comes up. It's not, in rhythm. It feels like, hey, the ball needs to be out at a certain time, but the quarterback doesn't always cut the ball loose. At the same time, it feels like we hear in the media or from like Sirianni and all them, like, hey, like he hasn't turned the ball over in X amount of games. It feels like that is being prioritized. And so it feels like, all right, well, Hurts is doing what is asked from him in a bunch of ways. But from a schematic level, Tage, it doesn't feel like they make life easier for the receivers. I always talk about the Vikings passing game because obviously you have Justin Jefferson and Jordan Addison, and not everyone can recreate that. But let me tell you, the Eagles have A.J. Brown and Devontae Smith, who obviously Brown is different than Jefferson. Obviously Smith is different than Addison. But finding ways to also open up space for your dominant receiver that everyone knows the ball is going to go there. Everyone knows he's the top of your concept. So, I hope that whether they look there for inspiration or you're just getting into different like stacks with Brown and Smith. So you're using their gravity kind of against the defense in different ways. So it feels like they're not making life easier for the quarterback. They're not making life easier for the receivers. The quarterback is doing, I think, what is asked from him in terms of, not throwing turnover-worthy plays, and then you don't have a high volume, so we don't get all of those kind of high-end reps where I would love to see them. They got 4 weeks left. They're going to be in the 2 seed. Like, it really would be a hard, I think, thing for them to end up with the 1 seed. They're going to win the division unless, like, something crazy happens. Like, I feel like I would love to see them, like, if it was us in Madden, we'd be just practicing, hey, we're going to throw the ball 60 times this game. We just need to be able to figure it out. Of course, they're not going to do that. And I'm not advocating for in the playoffs for them to be like, we need to throw the ball 40 times in this game, because that's not how they're going to win. That is not their formula. But I have seen the small components of like a competent passing game, whether it's Hurts executing at a super high level, whether it's you get like small examples of, hey, AJ Brown bump motioning into the out and up in week 1 against the Packers. Like, you see the smaller aspects of it, or against the Ravens, that kind of inbreaker off play action. So they need to put it together. I think that to get to this ceiling they want to, you have to put it together. I think that if it was a team that didn't have Super Bowl aspirations, I think people just wouldn't spend as much time on it. But they can. Like, they really can win the Super Bowl the way the defense is playing, the way the run game is. So you just want to see things put together a little bit in the passing. And what do you have here for the Eagles offense?
I mean, first off, that was a fantastic breakdown of the Eagles pass offense. I don't have as detailed notes on the Eagles passing game, but hopefully I can add on to a little bit of what you said there. So yeah, I mean, you summarized it like first in EPA per rush, 14th in EPA per pass, right? So, you have a pretty big difference between how efficient they are rushing the ball versus passing relative to the rest of the league. And it doesn't, it might not matter a ton, like in these, in some of these games that they play where they're bigger favorites, because they can really lean on the run game. They have the lowest pass rate over expected in the league. But when you're playing some of the top teams in the NFL, your Bills, your Lions, those types of teams, like, you want to feel comfortable about your drop back game, more than where it is at right now. And so, like, first problem is Hurts is taking a sack on 9% of his dropbacks, which is bottom 5 in the league. So he just needs to get more comfortable at, getting rid of the ball, maybe putting it in harm's way a little bit more, because it seems like he's just not trying to throw interceptions, which was like something pointed out about Eagles reporters in training camp. Like, he just seems not to be super aggressive down the field with his passes. But the other big thing that I want to talk about with the Eagles pass game, and why I think that it's in a little bit of a slump right now, is they have the 5th best EPA per dropback against man coverage, but the 20th best EPA per dropback against zone coverage. And so I looked into what could be causing this, and I think it's almost fully explained by how often Jalen Hurts is throwing to AJ Brown. And So, you look at the situation right now where AJ Brown is unhappy with the amount of targets he's getting, and his target share is very high in general, relative to other receivers. The Eagles just run the ball a lot. So there's a lot of plays where he's out there and they're just not dropping back to pass. But when you look at his target share and you see it's 21.7% on the season, and you also notice that his target share drops by about 6 percentage points against zone and then rises by that same amount against man coverage. You can see like against zone coverage, targeting AJ Brown as infrequently as Jalen Hurts currently is not going to work because he has the highest success rate when targeted versus zone of any pass catcher on this team. And so like I just think Jalen Hurts needs to target AJ Brown more against zone. He's like the go-to answer against man coverage, and he definitely deserves that many targets when they see man. But when they're facing zone coverage, Hurts just needs to get rid of the ball a little bit better than he is right now, like take less sacks, but also find AJ Brown more frequently.
There's so much there. We could do multiple episodes just on the Eagles passing offense where of course we're not in the room, so we're not hearing exactly what the teaching is. We're not hearing exactly what the priorities are, but think about the quarterback, you think about the coaches there, you think about the system overall. Like versus man coverage, they're comfortable being hey, we're just gonna take our one-on-one on the outside. We're gonna throw to AJ Brown. Like that makes sense that they're so good against man coverage and then against zone. Sometimes you have to scheme open a receiver. Like you have to find a way to kind of really stress just the defense's zones. And that's not something that they're doing at a high level right now. Again, you get like small bits of it. You get some good examples of having AJ Brown, like, the deep crosser or like two deep crossers with a kind of vertical or a post on the outside. Like that concept is something that I love. So you see it at times. It's just not frequent enough at this point. And then you start to think about, all right, Jalen Hurts has had multiple offensive coordinators at the same time. Like, the offenses over the last 3 years are kind of from the same system. So it's not like we're getting Hurts with Ben Johnson, or we can have a full evaluation of, hey, can you throw over the middle of the field, do under center, play action kind of frequently. And then you look at Kellen Moore, who has produced, high end offenses at different spots. But then you look at, all right, well, is it Dak Prescott? It's kind of what I love about football. Like we cannot give one single person credit or blame on like any play. Even when players make absurd plays, it's still kind of within the context of the system. It still exists, kind of everyone back and forth. I think it's unfortunate this week where everyone's talking about, AJ Brown and Jalen Hurts friends. Like, I mean, I'm sure that they're fine, right? Like it's a professional relationship at worst. I think there's a lot of history between them. Obviously, I think that like we see such a small aspect of it, right? We see like this the three like most emotional hours for a player, and then obviously like Brandon Graham goes on the radio, says like, oh, they may not be friends. He has to backtrack. He
Yeah.
has to go in different ways. That stuff is just like less interesting to me. Obviously, Tej, I think both of us love a little mess. We love a little drama. I think they'll be fine. But it is going to show like on the field just what are the small things that they're able to tweak within their passing game, whether it's more quick throws, finding different ways to prioritize AJ Brown, just kind of getting ways. And look, the last time, I remember AJ Brown going against the Steelers, he's just jumping over people and catching multiple touchdowns. I just would like to see like that specific ball thrown more often, where
Yeah.
I think like me and you, we're easy to like be okay with risk because I mean, it's not our job on the line when we're throwing that ball up. If we throw an interception, it's not either me or you getting yelled at by the media. I still want to see Hurts be able to, and he is able to. I just want to see it maybe prioritize more where there's sometimes when AJ Brown is like kind of covered where you just have to let the ball loose. Like it's going to be the best option based on everything else because there's not just a ton of other options kind of going through there because some of the play extension and we're going to run around, the ball's going to end up as a throwaway. Like that's just not getting you the high end positives that I think some of those AJ Brown catches could have. So I think like Eagles fans as a whole probably have to be comfortable with a ecosystem that you get some more turnovers, you have some more interceptions, but Hurts is cutting that like outbreaker against who did they just play last week? Tish, I'm blanking out here. What am I doing?
The Panthers.
They just played the Panthers. But then you get some of those throws where Hurts just cuts the ball loose on that outbreaker against the Panthers. So it's a lot, and it's funny because they are notably 11-2, like just won nine straight games, just broke a franchise rushing record, and we just spent how much time talking about the Eagles passing off. Let's move on here to the Steelers defense. They are, of course, such a strong front. They're a team that they're going to do what they do. They're going to do it well. It's going to be a lot of zone coverage. So we just mentioned, that zone coverage kind of struggles for the Eagles passing game. I'm excited to see what Philadelphia has planned for them, but it starts up front for Pittsburgh. I think you can get them on the outside in different ways. You can beat them through the air, even though I think some of their stats are really positive against the pass. What do you have here for the Steelers defense?
Yeah, we've talked about the Steelers defense a couple times this season. I think they're just a very sound defense. Third against the pass, 12th against the run, sixth overall. Like they've just done a good job in a lot of games this season. And the thing that really impresses them or impresses me about them is they're really good at defending plays with motion and or play action. So offenses have a tough time scheming against them sometimes, where you see some of these more high powered offenses that had been doing really well throughout the season. When they play the Steelers, sometimes they just have a tougher time, scheming up some of the usual things that they're able to do really well at. And I attribute a lot of that to just like really good front seven play from this team, where their defensive line is amazing. Like, I mean, just across the board, the season that Cam Hayward is having, the season that TJ Watt, is usually having, where he's able to get almost a sack a game. And then like the linebacker play as well on top of that has been very good. And so like when you have that type of play from your front seven, you're able to defend against a lot of these things like motion, like play action that offenses try to do to try to gain the upper hand.
I like that you mentioned that. It feels like sometimes the Steelers, you get motion or play action, and you do those things. I think a lot of times to manipulate the defense in a certain way. They're just like, all right, like you can send 15 players in motion. We're gonna be playing the same kind of cover three zone look. So they're able to take care of things in a lot of different ways. But their front, like that, is like I just keep on talking about it because it's so important. I think that if you played them in a 7-on-7, you'd probably feel a lot more comfortable. But football is notably played with an offensive and defensive line where the Steelers are able to just win so often. So I think that boosts some of their pass numbers. That obviously creates tons of pressure. I think like in this matchup overall, when I started to think about positive matchups for the Eagles offense, like you got to find a way to run the ball just because that's what the Eagles are. I still think it's going to be AJ Brown on the outside at different times. Like it feels like every week we'll do this. Oh, there's like this problem with the Eagles offense, but they should also still get back to the same things that they're doing, which is AJ Brown on the outside running isolated routes. You're just hoping that instead of that 10-yard curl, it becomes that, deeper post. It becomes attacking vertical, because he can just run by guys, or even if he doesn't, he can win that ball in the air. So I just want to see how many reps of that we're able to get in this game. What are you looking at as a positive matchup for the Eagles offense?
Yeah, you were bold to pick something in the past game for for the Eagles offense as the positive matchup. I'm obviously going to go with something in the running game. Zone runs, like inside zone, outside zone. The Eagles don't use those type of runs as often as other teams in the league. It's still their most popular type of run, but they're not using it a ton. But they're very efficient when running zone runs in this game or in this season so far. And then in this game in particular, the Steelers defense has been okay at defending zone, but they're much better against gap and duo. And so just want to see Saquon Barkley, get some handoffs, flow with the offensive line and break off some explosive runs.
Man, I mean, the offensive line has been so much fun to watch where they are big, big guys. And that's to me the just like most fun matchup, I think, overall in this game is just the Steelers defensive line against the Eagles offensive line. It is going to be just such a fight on every single snap, whether it's Hayward inside, like obviously the edge rushers against Johnson and Mailata. It is going to, I think, just be so much fun. I do think you have to find ways to run your gap scheme, right? You got to find ways to run counter, whether it's just like you're running away from certain guys, you're running to certain guys, you're reading certain guys. Steelers defensive line is going to be able to create probably multiple splash plays in this game. You just hope that it doesn't sort of like bump you off of everything. And now thinking about a positive matchup here for the Steelers defense, I just think that the play extension plays for Jalen Hurts have just not been there so far. So if the Steelers just, hey, we're going to just kind of rush you straight up, whether it's we're cage rushing you or we're just like, we're going to kind of spurn you out of the pocket. You have to get into space. We're comfortable in our zone coverage. That feels like something that the Steelers can do. They can take away like base passing routes that the Eagles have. So it feels like maybe they are going to have to rely on Hurts a little bit more, unless of course that running game just gets going. I don't know if you have just anything overall positive for the Steelers defense against the Eagles offense.
Well, I mean, I just think that the Steelers will like be happy in this game when the Eagles drop back to pass. Just because like Steelers pass defense is so good, Eagles pass defense is average. Right now, maybe that's being a little bit nice to them, but yeah, I mean, just like Steelers pass rushers like are if they're able to get past the first wall, like the offensive line, like because of Hurts's like ability to or inability to avoid sacks this year better, or like as good as what he usually is. Like they should be able to convert a lot of those pressures into sacks. I brought up to you over text, like he took 4 sacks for 25 yards last game against the Panthers. And so you don't want to do that type of thing in this game. But you mentioned some of those were offensive line communication issues. How do you usually like look for that when you're watching the film on these games? Like how are you able to tell if it's an offensive line issue, a quarterback issue? Obviously when it's not a quick sack, like when it's a longer developing sack.
Yeah, I think you can see on those examples against the Panthers kind of clearly. And look, Hurts plays at least a bit of a role into it in terms of like he's pointing out the mic, he's kind of setting the protection, obviously with Cam Jurgens. On those specific examples, like one is a kind of a guard pull play action where like the defense I think just has a good call where you get a linebacker run through and it feels pretty clear. And then another one where the center's trying to pass off a stunt, but he's passing it off to no one. So it's just hard for me to like in play be like, all right, well that's Hurts' fault. He wasn't able to or he was holding on to the ball too long. It's certainly, again, I'm not in the rooms. Like, it could be that you're pointing to the wrong, or you're setting the protection in the wrong direction. Those two specifically didn't, to me, feel like they were on Hurts. They could have been in a bit of a different way. But at the same time, like, Hurts is holding on to the ball. And even like that fact alone is also, to me, not just Hurts, right? Like, if your offense is asking you to kind of like have these relatively like core concepts that defenses can easily take away, you're going to get some play extension. Whether it's, hey, now we need to ask Jalen just kind of dirt balls, like maybe that's kind of your answer. But yeah, it's just, I think it's a little bit of tough sledding. Again, I just want to keep on remembering a team that is like last week. I really felt like, hey, this team's going to be in New Orleans when I'm there. We're going to be talking to all these guys over and over. But now you kind of take a little bit of a step back, even in a win, even on a big win streak against a team that played the Kansas City Chiefs really tight against, or like a Carolina Panthers team that both of us feel is really moving in the right direction. I don't know if you want to finish off here just a fun matchup you have for the Steelers defense against the Eagles offense.
Yeah, I alluded to this a little bit when talking about the offense versus defense matchups, but specific matchup in this game, I think that'll be really fun is Steelers pass rushers versus Eagles offensive tackles. Like Eagles offensive tackles are so good. Like Jordan Mailata has taken a step up in his pass protection ability this year, but just like overall, they're so sound when they're pass blocking, and then the Steelers just have so many pass rushers on the edge that they just keep throwing out there, and they're all like relatively efficient. So that'll be a fun matchup to watch in this game.
I'm glad you mentioned Mailata. It really does feel like he's taking a step up where, last year, like to think of just some times where defensive ends were able to get on him a little bit. So I really like the way that he is playing. It is at a super, super high level. It's just fun to watch that offensive line work in tandem, separate and everything. Let's move on here to the Steelers offense against the Eagles defense where, Russell Wilson, he's improving. You got no George Pickens in that game against the Browns. The numbers were not good. Seeing some of that play extension, attacking the seam in different ways. It feels like now we've seen that over a few weeks. That is a kind of like a move in the positive direction. Is it like, oh, this is this beautiful offensive ecosystem? Maybe not. It seems like George Pickens maybe out for this game as well, which I think would be so massive for the Eagles, obviously for the Steelers as well. I'm not sure if you have anything fun here for just the Steelers offense in general.
Yeah, I mean, let's talk about Russell Wilson. I think something that's really interesting about him is he has the 14th highest average at the target, but the third highest deep throw rate. So he's really just picking and choosing his spots on when to throw deep, and it's worked out for him so far. Second highest EPA per pass on throws of 20 plus air yards, only behind Sam Darnold. And a lot of that production, like you mentioned, was George Pickens going up and making plays, but Russ was still able to complete 3 of his 5 deep balls last week. So, that's something to continue to monitor. It'll probably regress towards the mean as the season goes on. He's played half the season compared to a lot of these other quarterbacks, so his efficiency will probably just be higher on a small sample because of that. But if he's able to keep this up, like this Steelers offense on a down to down basis, like they're not going to do a ton of like 5+ yard plays, but like they can just hit on these explosives randomly, and they only need a hit on 2 or 3 of them a game, and they should be able to put up a decent amount of points.
I mean, we should appreciate that, right? Just hit a deep ball every once in a while, and you're cooking. Let's move on here to the Eagles defense, where under Vic Fangio, it has been a ton of fun this season. It really is a top end unit, and that is without dominant edge rusher play, which I think is really notable. They have Zach Bond and Nakobe Dean playing at a super high level At linebacker, Quinyon Mitchell is a stud on the outside. Sly has played, I think, just well enough. There's times where he's been beat, but he's been able to recover in big situations. Of course, Cooper DeJean inside has really kind of jump started, I think, what Fangio wants to do, where you can get heavy against him and they'll play nickel and they'll be fine because DeJean in the box or DeJean pressed up kind of on a condensed receiver, they're happy to do that. So they feel flexible in that way. They feel flexible with Bond going down to the line of scrimmage. I just really like that, for past Fangio teams, sometimes if you looked at just what the defensive personnel was, you kind of knew exactly what front they were going to have. But now, because of that flexibility with Bond, you can kind of jump back and forth between different fronts, really, really quickly. I think Fangio does a great job, like in game, play to play. We need to switch something up. We need to kind of find just a different answer. A lot of times it's just getting back to kind of his core principles, but you have that flexibility because of this defensive front. Again, like with an edge room that is not like setting the world on fire. I really think that like the edge or star edge rusher is such kind of not like an easy way, but that's kind of how you want to build a pass rush overall. But this is built through the inside with Jalen Carter, with finding different ways to kind of stunt guys. What do you have here for the Eagles defense?
Yeah, I mean those are a lot of great points about the Eagles defense. Obviously playing really well, second in EPA per play allowed since week 8. And yeah, I mean the players on this defense are just fantastic. Like Zach Bond is someone who won't win Defensive Player of the Year, but like should be a candidate or at least considered. DeJean and Mitchell have played really well, especially for rookie corners. Jalen Carter obviously is a stud. On the interior of their defensive line, and I think Josh Sweat is being a little bit underrated. I don't know. I know he doesn't have he might not have like all like the flashy plays, but he just generates pressure. At a pretty high level. As well, and you hope that you can get some other just pass rushers in there as well, like Nolan Smith. But what Fangio is doing this year, where they're playing more man coverage, they're playing more single high. Is very interesting because he understands he has the talent to do so. And so he's just really doing a good job of kind of switching up his defenses week to week basis to take advantage of some of these opposing offenses.
What are we thinking here, Tage, is a positive matchup for the Steelers offense?
Yeah, I mean, mentioned this when talking about the Steelers offense as a whole, but the deep passing for the Steelers will always be something that you kind of hope on, or you hope you can hit on if you're Russell Wilson, and then it's also something that the Eagles haven't been tested on a ton, but definitely could be in this game.
I think that is an interesting point to me because, like, yeah, Quinton Mitchell has just not been thrown at, and it feels like no matter what cornerback you are, Russ is going to throw the ball at you. He's going to throw those deep vertical shots. I think it's going to be exciting to see just how the Eagles cornerback deal with those situations. It feels like Russ, if he's able to extend the play, like that ball is going to be up in the air. And is that going to land in a Steeler hand? Is it going to land in an Eagle hand? Like that's going to be, I think, a lot of fun to watch. I really want to see, like, Quinton Mitchell has early in the season had a bunch of reps where it was just like so close to being an interception. And now people just don't throw at him at all. They're just kind of targeting the opposite direction. So that's going to be fun to watch. Something I'm really excited to see in this game is just, whatever Jalen Carter reps inside when Frazier is sliding to him from the center spot. Like, I think that will be a situation where it could be positive for Pittsburgh. It's probably going to be positive for Philadelphia, but just like watching Jalen Carter try and evolve, try and continue to push his moves forward. I think that's been a lot of fun where the Panthers got him a few times. Like they really did, I think, a good job on the inside. At the same time, Carter, like just in a snap, can totally win a rep, can totally ruin a play. So I really like seeing that, from Jalen Carter, because again, like the Eagles are building their pass rush really through that inside.
Yeah, no, I mean, I agree. Yeah, and I want to hear like what you kind of think about the Quinyon Mitchell nicknames that have been coming out. Like, which one do you kind of prefer? There's Quintanamo Bay, which I think is a really good one, and then there's also San Quinyon. Which of those are you calling Quinyon Mitchell when you do the Philly special with Cheel?
Well, I mean, we just call him Quinyon. Come on, Tage. But I like that they like you don't get to choose your own nickname, right? Whatever we call each other, like you don't get to choose your own nickname, unfortunately. But like I think Sirianni came to one of the press conferences in a Quinyanamo Bay t-shirt or sweatshirt instead of Quintanamo Bay. So Tage, it's important to get your Y's, you get your T's, and I think Mitchell wore one as well. I think that the bigger point is like as a rookie to get like everyone wants a nickname. I love that. Like the team overall, I think, is moving in the right direction. Now they got their celebration that they're doing kind of all the time. We got the Panthers mocking the celebration. I think that just like the attitude stuff and all that. Like obviously you're not always able to quantify it, but watching it is fun. Like it is fun to see a team that, I mean, the unit deserves a nickname. The defense overall, even like the linebacker, like I'm trying to push different things, whether it's, I don't know, like the Smash Bros or something like that. It's just
Yeah,
important
I
to,
like that. I
yeah,
like
right.
that.
I mean, like,
Yeah.
we try and do it. Like you tried Thunder and Lightning with Montgomery and Gibbs last year. They went with Sonic and Knuckles. Tage, it feels like,
Yeah.
maybe you just had to update with the times. And maybe, like we always say, not all great artists are appreciated in
I
their
mean, the
time.
the video game nicknames I feel like always hit. Like those are ones that, everyone can relate to. So like that ended up working out for Gibbs and Montgomery. And then if your linebacker one catches on, you get another one there as well. But yeah, I mean there is something to like, yeah, I mean you're right. You can't quantify it, but like it's definitely something you can feel when like a defense is like on, like when they're having a hot stretch of games, and like just kind of like the attitude they have, like the hype that they'll give each other in between plays. Like there is something that you notice at like both levels of football for that I always think is really interesting. It always makes it more fun to watch when you see the defense like kind of all celebrating together and everything.
I love it. And the Eagles will hope to see it a bunch against the Steelers.